In the lead up to the episode, The Winter Solstice 2, Aang has a vision of a comet crashing into the world, so he has to talk to Avatar Roku to discuss its meaning. But to do so, he has to go into the Fire Nation for the first time in the series. Appa refuses to fly him there without Sokka and Katara, but as they finally make ways, Zuko is behind them as he wants to recapture the Avatar for himself to return home. This opening scene has a lot to unpack already. Firstly, we've already spent 7 episodes exploring the Southern Water Tribe and a vast area of the Earth Kingdom. As for the Fire Nation, we really don't have much going on, since the world is at war with them, so they are a mystery to the audience this early in the show. The idea of visiting the enemy territory creates anticipation to the viewer, who are eager to learn more about the primary antagonists, whilst deepening the world building within the Avatar universe. Furthermore, the introduction scene highlights significant character development. It's the first time here we see Appa have a personality of his own, as not just a means of transport plot device, but as an animal who makes decisions important to the plot. As if he knows Aang travelling on this dangerous quest alone is a recipe for disaster. Then you got Aang. We know how much he loves Katara, and despite her using her feminine emotional blackmail to convince him to pull out of the mission to find Roku, Aang understands his duty now. He has seen firsthand what his 100-year absence has caused the world, and he ignores her demand to stay put. Sokka and Katara recognize the Avatar's duty, as well as their own, which is to help Aang save the world. So they insist on tagging along on this quest, no matter the danger and no matter the warning that Aang gave them, further reinforcing their commitment to end the war. As for the banished prince Zuko, he is willing to commit treason by going against his banishment, just for a shot to regain validation from a nation that has done such heinous things to the world. Just from the first 2 minutes of this episode, the theme of purpose and duty is presented in each of our major characters. But let's lay low on the English teacher analysis for now, and discuss something we can all enjoy: a fast-paced chase sequence. It starts off with Zuko firing a stink bomb at the gang, which is the least of their concerns, as both Aang and Zuko have to charge past a Fire Nation blockade. The blockade is under command by Zhao, a rival of Prince Zuko, in a battle to recapture the Avatar, and Aang, who is the Avatar. Behind the intense action, where the Fire Nation tries to knock down Appa without giving a single fuck about shooting one of their own, and Aang and Sokka nearly getting themselves killed in the process, this scene shows how Zuko and Aang are different sides of the same coin. Despite both the Avatar and the Banished Prince both having opposing worldviews and motives which clash with one another, they have one common enemy standing in the way of both of their plans. Sure, other episodes do this a lot better, diving in greater detail, but Winter Solstice 2 is where we see it done for the first time simultaneously. The chase scene ends with an intense stare down between Zuko and Zhao, because they may be on the same side, but they are not allies. Besides, Zhao wants to know where Aang is going, so it's a great setup to follow Zuko. The Banished Prince is not stupid, and attempts to sneak off his boat on a smaller vessel to travel to Roku's temple without getting pursued. There's a 10-second montage of the gang travelling with Appa throughout the night, not only characterising the Sky Bison yet again, but to expand the world building. Just because the crew have a way of travelling place to place does not mean that they have fast travel around the world of Avatar. At least, not yet. The squad sneak into Roku's temple when they run into the Fire Sages, who although throughout history have only been loyal to the Avatar, a century of propaganda, tyranny, and hopelessness that the Avatar will ever return caused them to attack Aang. There is another action-packed chase scene around the temple, until it turns out that the Fire Sage Shiryu is willing to betray the other sages, to betray the Fire Nation, in order to serve the Avatar. When you look at history and the fight against oppression, we often think of one person as the catalyst for greater good. Martin Luther King, Joan of Arc, Nelson Mandela, Emily Davison. I mentioned their names, you know exactly who they are and what they fought for. In a world of evil, it often takes one person to change the world. And I'm doing the same thing here. Shiryu. When Shiryu guides Aang, Katara and Sokka into Roku's chamber, we see that the doors are closed, only to be opened by 5 simultaneous fire blasts, or the firebending of one avatar. This gives Sokka an idea to make some grenades to fake firebend. Unfortunately, the plan doesn't work, but as Katara points out, it looks like the plan did work. So the two of them adjust the plan to fool the other fire sages to think that Aang did in fact open the door, and is communicating with Roku as we speak. This develops both of the siblings of the Water Tribe. Sokka is slowly demonstrating his confidence as the main leader of Team Avatar, as so far he is a comic relief character, despite on paper having the most logic of the group. Katara, on the other hand, is the maternal figure of the group. When things go rough as they have done so far, it's down to Katara to hold the group together. Yes, Sokka's plan failed despite its genius, but it's Katara who adapted it, hence bringing up the team's hope through the adversity of failure. The sages fall for the fake, and Katara, Sokka, Shiryu, and Momo the Lemur ambush the sages to create the perfect opportunity for Aang to rush through into Roku's chamber. Unfortunately, with the worst timing imaginable, Zuko captures Aang and orders the sages to close the doors quickly. Just when all hope is lost, Aang styles on Zuko and escapes his grasp, running straight towards the chambers, maneuvering around the angry sages, scraping in just in the nick of time. First time I watched this, I went apeshit. So let's break it down. First things first, hype. I was not expecting Zuko to get Aang on this exact moment, and I was convinced by the second time Katara called for him that something had gone tremendously wrong. Editor's note: look at the wrist lock that Sokka does in this frame. It's the same one Suki did on him when he started boasting to the Kyoshi warriors. Also, look at the way Aang looks at his captured friends before immediately darting towards the open doors. Is this Aang cutting his losses for the greater good of the war? Is this the Avatar's sudden switch in mentality? Could Aang just have been swerving around this treacherous sage and Katara happened to be in the shot by coincidence? I leave this interpretation to you guys, as it was really slick, even if you don't overthink it. The room glows when Aang enters, despite the sages attempting to reopen it with 5 simultaneous blasts. Avatar Roku does not want them in there. It's as if the Avatar spirit knows the danger that awaits, foreshadowing a later confrontation. Shiryu explains that he betrays the sages because it has always been the sages' duty to help the Avatar, the one who will always do what they believe is good for the world. Shiryu's reasoning is interrupted abruptly by Zhao, who sarcastically remarks how his noble actions are still treacherous to the Fire Nation. He also boasts how Zuko's smokescreen on a smaller boat didn't work on him. You see, no matter what your morals are in this world, the vast majority of whatever ideologies you oppose honestly believe that they are in the right. But if you're not with us, you're against us, and that's how humans fundamentally are made. Zhao proclaims that he will wait until Aang leaves Roku's chamber to strike him down and capture him. Meanwhile, a frustrated Aang is impatient that he can't initially reach out to Roku, despite the fact that he didn't miss the solstice and that he risked the life of himself and his entire crew just to come to this temple. When suddenly, the light hits Roku in the eyes and the previous avatar appears. Aang looks at him in utter disbelief, but regains his composure and shows respect for his previous life. The juxtaposition of being so unfamiliar with a man that you have known for a lifetime. What Roku reveals to Aang sets the tone for the rest of the cartoon, putting the stakes on the table and foreshadowing the epic conclusion at the end of Book 3. He explains to Aang that Sozon's comet is the greatest buff a firebender can get, strong enough to start a war by wiping out entire nations, like the Air Nomad genocide seen in the 3rd episode. The fate is sealed. Firelord Ozai will use the comet's power once again to win the war once and for all. We see our final boss for the first time, a muscular man with a haunting presence, darkness covering his true identity. Aang is told he must master all 4 elements before Summer's End, or the consequences are irreversible. The war has to end now or never. Aang, worried at this information, starts to doubt whether or not he can perform such a monumental task. Though he has mastered the elements once, he will do it again. No more words are spoken by Roku. His avatar spirit telepathically warns Aang of the dangers of Zhao and his men, and offers to help him out. The voices of 1,000 avatars reply,
I'm ready.
The chamber's doors open and the ruthless firebenders blast the seemingly defenseless avatar, whilst the helpless Katara and Sokka watch with despair. But there he is, Avatar Roku. He redirects the fire, harming those who dare challenge the avatar and sparing the souls who will help him bring balance to the world. So why would he free a captured Zuko? That is a very good question. Roku destroys the temple as a way of claiming back his shrine from the treacherous Fire Lord sympathizers, whilst you see Sokka and Katara hanging onto each other for protection. As the enemy firebenders flee and the temple is on the verge of destruction, the solstice ends and Roku stands down. If Aang wants his help again, he is going to need to dig deep inside his soul and find the spirit of his former lives, like the bridge between our worlds that he is. Just as the gang is going to fall from the building, Momo returns with help from Appa and they fly away, once again emphasizing the importance of our animal familiars as more than just plushies to sell to kids. Little detail to note here is that Momo is still wearing the hat of the sage that he ambushed earlier. Zhao arrests the 5 sages for failing to protect the temple from Aang, and angrily rants that he has lost both the Avatar and the Banished Prince for his own honor, pride, and status, even though his greed and poor strategy is also to blame for the fleeing of our main characters. Zuko spies on the fleeing Sky Bison with a look of determination. I will get them next time, setting up a future confrontation between the two parties. Whilst the kalimba is playing, a silhouette of a distressed Aang is looking down, daunted by the monumental task he has up ahead. Without saying a word, Katara, Sokka, and Momo all hug each other and embrace the young avatar, as if to say, don't worry, we have your back. As a finishing touch, Appa is flying towards the full moon, symbolizing the next phase of the avatar's journey, which is a beautiful ending to the best episode of Book 1.